How far can you push someone before they finally walk away forever? What happens when your little test backfires so badly, the only thing waiting at home is a stack of legal documents and your life in shambles? Here's how my husband turned the tables after I humiliated him in front of everyone. I stared at my phone, scrolling through Jasper's latest Instagram post from his music tour. God, he looked good. 3 years of marriage to Elliot had made me forget what excitement felt like. Don't get me wrong, Elliot was a good husband. Reliable, steady, predictable. But predictable was exactly the problem. "Mommy, can you help me with my puzzle?" Mila's sweet voice interrupted my scrolling. My 6-year-old daughter stood beside the kitchen table, holding colorful pieces in her small hands. "In a minute, honey," I said, not looking up from my phone. Jasper had posted a photo from some trendy LA rooftop bar. The caption read, "Missing the good old days." Was that directed at me? We'd dated for 2 years before I met Elliot. Jasper was everything Elliot wasn't: spontaneous, artistic, dangerous. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Rebecca. "Girl, you look miserable lately. When's the last time you did something for you?" She wasn't wrong. I felt trapped in suburban mediocrity. PTA meetings, grocery shopping, watching Elliot do taxes on weekends. Where was the passion, the adventure? "Lysandra, dinner's ready," Elliot called from the kitchen. I could smell his famous spaghetti and meatballs, another predictable Tuesday night meal. At dinner, Elliot talked about his accounting firm's new client, while Mila played with her food. I barely listened, my mind wandering to Jasper's tour. He'd be in LA next week for 3 shows. "How was your day, babe?" Elliot asked, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "Fine," I said, pulling away to wipe Mila's face. "Just thinking about some work stuff." That wasn't entirely a lie. I did run a small event planning business, though it was more of a hobby than serious work, but an idea was forming. What if I told Elliot I had a work opportunity in LA? What if I went to see Jasper? Not to cheat exactly, but to see if Elliot would fight for me, to see if he'd show some jealousy, some passion. After putting Mila to bed, I called my best friend Carla. "You want to do what?" Carla laughed when I explained my plan. "Lysandra, that's brilliant. Elliot takes you for granted. He needs a wake-up call." "You think so? I mean, I'm not actually going to do anything with Jasper. It's just to see if Elliot cares enough to get jealous. Honey, if my husband was as boring as yours, I'd have done this years ago. You deserve excitement. You deserve a man who fights for you." The next morning, I started laying the groundwork. I mentioned to Elliot over coffee that I might have a business opportunity coming up. "That's great, babe," he said, not looking up from his newspaper. "What kind of event?" "A music industry thing. Might need to travel for it." I watched his face carefully. No reaction. "Sounds interesting. I can watch Mila if you need to go anywhere." That was it? No questions about where or when or with whom? My irritation grew. Rebecca was right. I was invisible to my own husband. At my office that afternoon, I crafted the perfect cover story. I'd tell Elliot I was consulting on a music festival in LA. It wasn't completely false. Jasper had mentioned his band was playing some festival circuit. I texted Jasper. "Hey, stranger, saw you're in LA next week. I might be there for work. Would love to catch up." His response came quickly. "Lysandra, hell yes, it's been too long. I'm at the Roosevelt Hotel downtown. Let's definitely hang out." My heart raced. This was really happening. That evening, I broached the subject with Elliot while he helped Mila with homework. "So that work thing I mentioned, it's happening. I need to fly to LA Thursday for a long weekend. Music festival consulting gig." Elliot looked up from Mila's math worksheet. "This Thursday? That's pretty short notice." "I know, but it's a great opportunity. The client specifically requested me." The lie came easily. "Okay, sure. I'll take Friday off to be with Mila. What's the client company called?" My mind blanked for a second. Harmony Events. They're new, very exclusive. Never heard of them, but that's cool. You deserve more recognition for your work. Again, no jealousy, no suspicion, no fight. Just supportive, boring Elliot. After Mila went to bed, I booked my flight and hotel. I chose a luxury suite at the same hotel where Jasper was staying. If Elliot bothered to check our credit card statement, he'd see the charges. Maybe that would finally get a reaction. Wednesday night, I packed carefully. Sexy dresses I hadn't worn in years, lacy lingerie, my best perfume. I wasn't planning to sleep with Jasper, but I wanted to feel attractive again. "You're packing pretty fancy for a work trip," Elliot observed from our bedroom doorway. "It's an upscale event. I need to look professional." I held up a red cocktail dress. "What do you think of this one?" "Beautiful. You'll be the most stunning woman there." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. Where was the possessiveness? The concern about me traveling alone to a city full of temptations? Thursday morning, Elliot drove me to the airport. He kissed me goodbye at the curb, a quick, distracted peck. "Have a safe trip. Text me when you land." "That's it?" I asked. "You're not going to miss me?" "Of course I'll miss you, but it's just 3 days." He smiled that calm, unflappable smile that used to comfort me, but now made me want to scream. As his car disappeared into traffic, I felt a mix of excitement and vindication. This trip would prove that Elliot didn't appreciate what he had. When I came back with stories of my glamorous LA adventure, maybe he'd realize he needed to step up his game. On the plane, I texted Carla. "Taking off now. Operation Wake Up Call is a go." She responded with fire emojis and, "Get your groove back, girl. Make him sweat." I also texted Rebecca. "Finally doing something for me. Wish me luck." "About time. You've been a zombie housewife too long. Have fun and don't feel guilty." As the plane lifted off, I felt more alive than I had in months. Elliot was about to learn that he couldn't take Lysandra Vane for granted anymore. The Roosevelt Hotel's lobby was exactly as glamorous as I'd imagined, all Art Deco elegance and Hollywood history. I checked into my suite, a sprawling space with a king bed and panoramic city views. The company credit card I'd used for the booking would show up on our statement as business expenses, but the luxury spoke for itself. I texted Jasper. "Just checked in, room 1247. This place is incredible." His reply came instantly. "I'm in 1205. We're practically neighbors. Want to grab drinks at the rooftop bar in an hour?" My pulse quickened. An hour to transform from suburban mom to the woman I used to be. I slipped into the red dress, applied makeup with care I hadn't taken in years, and spritzed on the expensive perfume I saved for special occasions. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like the tired mom who'd packed school lunches that morning. The rooftop bar was buzzing with beautiful people, actors, musicians, industry types who belonged in this world of glamour and possibility. I spotted Jasper immediately. He'd always had that magnetic presence that made him the center of any room. "Lysandra." He stood and kissed my cheek, his hands lingering on my waist. "You look absolutely stunning. Marriage agrees with you." "Does it?" I laughed, accepting the champagne he'd ordered. "Some days I'm not so sure." We found a corner table overlooking the glittering city. The conversation flowed as easily as the expensive champagne. Jasper told me about his tour, his music, the creative projects that kept him traveling the world. I found myself embellishing my own life, making my event planning business sound more successful and exciting than it was. "So what's the real story?" Jasper asked after our third round. "Happily married mom doesn't usually fly solo to LA for mysterious work trips." I hesitated. The champagne had loosened my tongue, but I wasn't ready to admit this was all an elaborate test for my husband. "Sometimes a girl needs an adventure," I said instead. "Elliot's a good man, but he's predictable." I needed to remember who I used to be. Jasper's eyes sparkled with understanding. The Lysandra I knew would never settle for predictable. We moved to dinner, at an exclusive restaurant where Jasper somehow got us a table without reservations. The Maître d' recognized him from his band's recent album release. This was the kind of life I'd given up. Spontaneous, exciting, full of possibilities. I posted a carefully curated photo on Instagram. Me and Jasper at dinner, captioned, "Unexpected reunion in LA, Anchastra work trip, Anchastra good times." Within minutes, likes and comments poured in from friends back home. Several asked about Jasper. They remembered him from our dating days. My phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. "Hope your work dinner is going well. Mila says hi. She drew you a picture." The guilt was brief. This wasn't about hurting Elliot. It was about making him realize what he had. When he saw the photo, when he realized I was having dinner with my ex-boyfriend, surely he'd call demanding explanations. But my phone stayed silent. Friday morning, I woke up in my own hotel room with a mild hangover and no regrets. Jasper had walked me to my door like a gentleman, though the tension between us was undeniable. I'd been faithful to my marriage vows, technically, but I'd felt more alive in one evening than I had in months. Jasper texted early. "Last night was amazing. Want to explore the city today? I know all the best spots." We spent the day playing tourist, hiking in Griffith Park, browsing galleries on Melrose, lunch at a trendy cafe in Venice Beach. I documented everything on social media, making sure my friends back home could see my glamorous LA adventure. At lunch, Jasper reached across the table and took my hand. "I've missed this, missed us." "Jasper," I started, but didn't pull my hand away. "I know you're married. I respect that, but you can't tell me you don't feel this connection." He was right. The chemistry that had drawn us together years ago was still there, simmering beneath the surface. But this was supposed to be about making Elliot jealous, not about actually reconnecting with my ex. "It's complicated," I said finally. The best things usually are. That afternoon, we returned to the hotel to rest before Jasper's concert that evening. In the elevator, the tension was thick enough to cut. When we reached my floor, Jasper followed me out. "I should probably get ready for tonight," I said, fishing for my keycard. "Yeah, me too." But he didn't move toward his own room. Instead, he stepped closer, backing me against my door. "Lysandra," he whispered, his face inches from mine. For a moment, I forgot about Elliot, about Mila, about my suburban life. There was only Jasper and the electricity between us and the feeling of being desired. The kiss was inevitable. Soft at first, then deeper as I responded despite myself. His hands tangled in my hair, and I pressed closer, hungry for the passion that had been missing from my life. We broke apart breathless. Reality crashed back. I was a married woman kissing her ex-boyfriend in a hotel hallway. "I can't," I whispered, though my body disagreed. "You already are," Jasper said softly. "The question is how far you want to take it." I fled into my room, heart racing. This was more complicated than I'd planned. I'd wanted to make Elliot jealous, but I hadn't expected to feel so tempted myself. My phone showed missed calls from home, Elliot checking in, Mila wanting to say goodnight. I called back, forcing normalcy into my voice. "How's the conference going?" Elliot asked. "Great, very educational. How's Mila?" "Missing her mommy, but we're having fun. We made pancakes for dinner." "That sounds perfect." The guilt hit harder this time. While I was playing with fire in LA, Elliot was home being a devoted father. "I love you," he said before hanging up. "Love you too," I replied automatically, the words feeling strange after Jasper's kiss. That night, I attended Jasper's concert. Watching him perform, I remembered why I'd fallen for him originally. He commanded the stage with raw charisma, his voice sending shivers through the packed venue. During one song, he caught my eye and winked. After the show, we went to an exclusive after-party. Jasper introduced me as his special friend from back home, and I basked in the attention. These people saw me as glamorous and interesting, not just another suburban mom. We danced until the early hours, bodies pressed together, the sexual tension from earlier still simmering. When Jasper whispered in my ear, "Come back to my room," I almost said yes. Instead, I made an excuse about being tired and retreated to my suite. I needed to think clearly, away from Jasper's intoxicating presence. Saturday was my last day in LA. Jasper suggested brunch and shopping on Rodeo Drive. As we strolled among the luxury boutiques, he bought me an expensive silk scarf. "I can't accept this," I protested. "It's just a gift between old friends," he said, wrapping it around my neck. "Besides, it matches your eyes." The intimate gesture felt more dangerous than the kiss. Gifts implied ongoing connection, future meetings, a relationship beyond this weekend. That evening, Jasper had another concert. I sat in the VIP section, feeling like I belonged in this world of music and glamour. During the show, he dedicated a song to someone special who reminds me that the best things in life are worth waiting for. The crowd cheered, but his eyes were on me. My heart raced with the thrill of being desired, of being the center of someone's attention. After the show, Jasper was more persistent. "This is our last night. Don't tell me you're going to waste it." We stood in the hotel hallway again, the same electric tension crackling between us. "I'm married, Jasper. To someone who lets you fly across the country without a second thought. When's the last time he looked at you the way I do?" He had a point. Elliot had barely reacted to my trip, hadn't called to check on me, hadn't shown an ounce of jealousy or concern. "This isn't about Elliot," I lied. "Isn't it? You're here because you're not happy, because you need something he can't give you." This time when he kissed me, I didn't pull away. We stumbled into my room, hands exploring, months of suburban frustration pouring out in desperate touches. But as Jasper's fingers found the zipper of my dress, Mila's face flashed in my mind. My daughter, who trusted me, who needed her mother to be better than this. "Stop," I gasped, pushing him away. "I can't do this." Jasper stepped back, frustrated but respectful. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." My voice was steadier than I felt. "This weekend has been incredible, but I can't cross that line." He nodded slowly. "I understand. But Lysandra, if you ever change your mind, you know where to find me." After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. I'd come so close to destroying my marriage, but I'd pulled back just in time. The weekend had served its purpose, hadn't it? I felt alive again, desirable, interesting. When I got home and told Elliot about my glamorous LA adventure, surely he'd realize what he could lose. Surely he'd fight harder for our marriage. As I packed for my morning flight, I carefully folded the silk scarf Jasper had given me. It would be my secret reminder of the weekend when I remembered who I used to be. The flight home felt like returning to a black and white movie after experiencing Technicolor. As the plane descended into our hometown's modest airport, I watched the familiar landscape and felt the weight of ordinary life settling back over me. Elliot picked me up with Mila bouncing in her car seat. "Mommy, I missed you so much." My daughter's enthusiasm was infectious, and guilt twisted in my stomach as I hugged her tight. "How was the conference?" Elliot asked as we drove home. His tone was casual, uninterested. "Incredible," I said, testing the waters. "Really eye-opening. I met some fascinating people in the music industry." "That's great, babe. I'm glad it went well." No follow-up questions. No curiosity about who these fascinating people were. I might as well have told him I'd spent the weekend watching paint dry. At home, I unpacked while Elliot made dinner. Hidden in my suitcase was the silk scarf from Jasper, along with business cards from industry contacts I'd never use, and photos on my phone that told a very different story than my supposed work conference. Over dinner, I tried again. The keynote speaker was actually someone I knew from college. Jasper Lynn. He's a musician now. Small world, right? Elliot nodded absently, focused on cutting Mila's chicken. "That's nice. Did you learn anything useful for your business? I stared at him in disbelief. I'd just told him I spent the weekend with my ex-boyfriend, and his response was to ask about business applications. Monday morning, I met Carla for coffee. She was dying to hear about my LA adventure. So, did it work? Is Elliot properly jealous and attentive now? I stirred my latte frustratedly. He barely reacted. I told him I ran into Jasper, and he just nodded like I'd mentioned the weather. What about your Instagram posts? Surely he saw those. If he did, he didn't say anything. I pulled up the photos on my phone, me and Jasper at dinner, at the beach, at his concert. Look at these. We look like a couple. How does a husband not react to this? Carla studied the photos with a frown. Okay, but you didn't actually do anything, right? Like, you kept it professional. The kiss flashed through my memory, but I pushed it away. Of course, it was just about making Elliot realize what he has. Well, maybe you need to be more obvious. Men can be dense about these things. That weekend, Elliot's parents invited us for Sunday dinner. Helen had never liked me much. She thought I was too high maintenance for her practical son. But this dinner would be perfect. With the whole family there, plus some of their friends, I could casually mention my LA trip and gauge reactions. The dinner was at Helen and Samuel's traditional dining room, with their good china and formal atmosphere. Besides Elliot's parents, there were 3 other couples, longtime family friends who'd known Elliot since childhood. Over the appetizer course, the conversation turned to recent travels. Perfect opening. Lysandra just got back from a business trip to LA, Elliot mentioned. Some music industry conference. How exciting, said Margaret, one of Helen's bridge partners. I love LA, so glamorous. It really was, I agreed, warming to my audience. I stayed at the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood. Very old-school glamour. Helen raised an eyebrow. That sounds expensive for a business trip. Well, image matters in that industry. You have to look the part. I took a sip of wine, building to my moment. Actually, the funniest thing happened. I ran into my ex-boyfriend Jasper. He's a musician now, and he was performing at some of the venues I was scouting. The table went quiet. Elliot continued eating his salad as if I hadn't spoken. Your ex-boyfriend? Margaret asked with obvious interest. How awkward. Not at all. It was actually wonderful catching up. We went to dinner, did some sightseeing. He showed me all the best spots in the city. I glanced at Elliot, who still seemed focused on his food. It's so nice when you can maintain friendships with people from your past, don't you think? Helen's disapproval was written across her face. I suppose that depends on the nature of the friendship. Oh, it was completely innocent, I laughed. Just 2 old friends reminiscing. Though I have to say, Jasper's done very well for himself. His band is getting quite successful. Very different from the life I chose. Samuel cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, different paths work for different people. Absolutely, I continued, emboldened by the wine and the attention. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen the more adventurous path. The creative life has such appeal, doesn't it? All that passion and spontaneity. Now I had everyone's attention. The other wives were exchanging glances, and their husbands looked uncomfortable. But Elliot was still just eating his damn salad. I mean, there's something to be said for stability, I went on, but sometimes a girl craves a little excitement, a little unpredictability. Lysandra, Helen said sharply, perhaps we should change the subject. But I was just getting started. The weekend in LA had reminded me of who I used to be, and these people needed to understand that I wasn't just boring suburban wife material. Oh, I'm not complaining about my life, I said with a laugh that sounded forced even to me. I'm just saying it's healthy to remember that we all have choices, that we're not trapped by our circumstances. Margaret leaned forward eagerly. So this musician, Jasper, he's single, very single and very charming. He took me to all these exclusive places, introduced me to industry people, made me feel like I belonged in that world. Finally, Elliot looked up from his plate, But instead of jealousy or concern, his expression was disappointed, tired. "That sounds like it was important to you," he said quietly. "It was. It reminded me that I'm more than just a wife and mother. I'm an interesting person with my own dreams and desires." The silence that followed was deafening. Helen looked mortified, Samuel was studying his wine glass intently, and the other couples were clearly wishing they were anywhere else. "Well," Helen said finally, "I think we all understand the importance of personal fulfillment," but her tone suggested she understood something entirely different. As dinner continued, I kept dropping hints about my glamorous LA weekend. How sophisticated Jasper was, how exciting his lifestyle seemed, how refreshing it was to be around someone who appreciated adventure. The other wives started making subtle digs about commitment and family values. Their husbands joined in with comments about appreciating what you have and the grass always being greener. But Elliot said nothing. He participated in other conversations, was charming to the other guests, helped his mother serve dessert. He acted like I hadn't just spent 10 minutes talking about how wonderful my ex-boyfriend was. During dessert, Margaret's husband Tom made a joke about keeping your wife away from old flames, and everyone laughed except Elliot and Helen. "Oh, Elliot's not the jealous type," I said with another forced laugh. "He's very secure, very trusting." The way I said trusting made it sound like a weakness rather than a virtue. Elliot excused himself from the table. I watched him walk to the kitchen, expecting him to return with some comment or reaction. Instead, he helped his mother with the dishes, while I held court in the dining room, regaling the guests with more stories from my LA adventure. When we finally left, the car ride home was silent except for Mila's chatter about playing with her grandparents' cat. "You were quiet tonight," I said as we pulled into our driveway. "Was I?" Elliot's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "I thought you might have questions about my trip, about running into Jasper." Elliot parked the car and turned to face me. "Do you want me to have questions, Lysandra?" The question caught me off guard. What do you mean?" "I mean, you've mentioned Jasper about 15 times since you got back from LA. You've made it very clear that you had a wonderful time with him. So I'm wondering, do you want me to be jealous? Is that what this is about?" My heart raced. Finally, a reaction. But his tone wasn't jealous, it was analytical, like he was solving a math problem. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "I was just sharing my experiences." Elliot nodded slowly. "Okay, let's get Mila inside." As we tucked our daughter into bed, I kept waiting for him to bring it up again, to demand details, to express concern, to show some emotion about his wife spending a weekend with her ex-boyfriend. But Elliot kissed Mila goodnight, helped me turn off the lights, and went to his home office to work on some client files. I stood in our bedroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was the same one who'd felt so alive and desirable in LA. But here, in this house, with this man who wouldn't fight for me, I felt invisible again. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos from the weekend. There was Jasper, looking at me with obvious desire. There was me, laughing and radiant in his attention. Maybe Carla was right, maybe I needed to be more obvious. The week after the dinner party, something shifted in our house. Elliot went through his normal routines, work, helping with Mila, household tasks, but there was a distance I couldn't quite define. He was polite, functional, but emotionally absent in a way that was new. I tried to recapture his attention by bringing up LA again, but his responses were minimal. When I showed him photos from the trip, he glanced at them briefly and said, "Looks like you had a good time." When I mentioned that Jasper had texted to thank me for showing him around, a lie, I texted him first, Elliot just nodded and went back to reading his book. It was infuriating. What kind of husband doesn't react when his wife is clearly getting attention from another man? Thursday evening, while Elliot was at his weekly accounting association meeting, I called Rebecca. He's either the most secure man in the world or he doesn't care, I complained. I practically threw my weekend with Jasper in his face, and he acted like I'd told him about a grocery shopping trip. Maybe he's playing it cool, Rebecca suggested. You know, reverse psychology. Elliot doesn't know what reverse psychology is. He's the most straightforward person I've ever met. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe you married the wrong guy. Her words hit harder than I expected. Rebecca, I'm just saying, you're obviously not happy. You flew across the country to see your ex-boyfriend. That's not normal married woman behavior. I didn't fly across the country to see Jasper. I had a work conference and, Lysandra, stop. We both know that's bullshit. You went to LA because you're bored with your life and wanted to feel exciting again. The truth in her words stung. So what if I did? Doesn't Elliot care enough to fight for his marriage? Maybe he doesn't know it needs fighting for. Or maybe he's already decided it's not worth it. That night, I lay in bed next to Elliot, studying his sleeping face. He looked peaceful, untroubled. How could he be so calm when our marriage was clearly in crisis? The next morning, I decided to push harder. Over breakfast, I casually mentioned that Jasper had invited me to his next show. He's going to be in San Francisco next month, said I should come up for the weekend, make it another business networking opportunity. Elliot looked up from his coffee. Are you planning to go? Finally, a direct question that might lead to an actual conversation about boundaries and expectations. I'm thinking about it, I said carefully. It would be good for business, and it was so nice reconnecting with him. I see. Elliot returned to his newspaper. Well, let me know if you decide to go. I'll arrange childcare for Mila. That was it? He was going to help me arrange a weekend with my ex-boyfriend. You don't have any concerns about me traveling to see Jasper again? Elliot folded his newspaper and looked at me directly. Lysandra, you're a grown woman. You can make your own choices about who you spend time with. But what about us? What about our marriage? What about it? The question hung in the air. I realized I didn't know how to answer it. What was I really asking? Permission to cheat? A fight that would prove he loved me? Some dramatic declaration of jealousy? Never mind, I said finally. I'm probably too busy to go anyway. But Elliot had already left for work. That weekend, I noticed other changes. Elliot, who usually handled our finances jointly, mentioned he was organizing some paperwork. He spent Saturday afternoon in his office, with bank statements and legal documents spread across his desk. Spring cleaning? I asked, bringing him coffee. Something like that, just making sure everything's in order. Sunday, he took Mila to his parents' house alone, saying I looked tired and should rest. When they returned, Mila ran to her room to play, and Elliot went straight to his office again. I followed him. Is everything okay? You seem distant lately. Elliot looked up from a folder of documents. I'm fine, just busy with some client work. But the papers I could see weren't client work. They looked like personal financial statements, property deeds, insurance policies. Elliot, what's going on? He closed the folder calmly. Nothing for you to worry about, just organizing some things. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Elliot wasn't angry or jealous or hurt, emotions I could understand and work with. He was just detached. Monday morning, after Elliot left for work and Mila for school, I went into his office. The folders were locked in his filing cabinet, but I found something else interesting. A business card for a family law attorney tucked into his desk calendar. My blood ran cold. Family law meant divorce lawyers. I stared at the card, Patricia Morrison, family law specialist, and felt the first real fear I'd experienced since this whole thing started. Was Elliot actually considering divorce? Over what? A harmless weekend in LA? But even as I thought it, I knew it hadn't been harmless. The flirting, the photos, the kiss I hadn't told anyone about, the way I'd humiliated him at his parents' dinner table. It all added up to something more serious than I'd wanted to admit. I spent the day in a panic, alternating between anger and fear. How dare he consider divorce without even talking to me? But also, oh God, what if he actually went through with it? When Elliot came home that evening, I was ready for a confrontation. "We need to talk," I said as soon as he walked through the door. "Okay, let me just say hi to Mila first." He spent 20 minutes helping our daughter with homework, reading her a story, being the perfect father he'd always been. The normalcy of it made my anxiety worse. Finally, we sat in the living room. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say, but looking at his calm, expectant face, the words came out wrong. "Are you planning to divorce me?" Elliot's expression didn't change. "Why would you ask that?" "I found the lawyer's card in your desk." "You went through my desk?" "That's not the point. The point is, you're consulting divorce lawyers without talking to me." "I haven't consulted anyone yet," Elliot said quietly. "I just wanted to understand my options." "Your options for what?" "For protecting myself and Mila if my marriage continues to deteriorate." The clinical way he said it, like he was discussing a failing business partnership, made me furious. "Our marriage isn't deteriorating. I went on one business trip." "Lysandra." His voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "You didn't go on a business trip. You flew to LA to spend a weekend with your ex-boyfriend. You've made that very clear." "I never said—" "You've mentioned Jasper approximately 30 times since you got back. You've shown me photos of the two of you together. You told my entire family how wonderful and exciting he is. You've made it obvious that you're not happy with our life together." Hearing it laid out so matter-of-factly was devastating. I wanted you to— "To what? To fight for you, to get jealous, to prove I love you by making a scene?" Yes, I thought, but couldn't say it out loud. "Lysandra, I'm not going to compete with your ex-boyfriend for my own wife's attention. If you want to be with him, then be with him. But don't expect me to participate in whatever game you're playing. It's not a game." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Elliot stood up. "I'm going to check on Mila and then do some work. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about what you actually want, let me know." He left me sitting alone in our living room, staring at the family photos on the mantel. In every picture, we looked happy. Wedding day, Mila's birth, family vacations, holidays. When had that happiness become not enough for me? That night, I lay awake while Elliot slept beside me, or pretended to sleep. I kept thinking about the lawyer's card, about the way he'd said, "protecting myself and Mila." For the first time since this whole thing started, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. The next few weeks passed in a strange, tense normalcy. Elliot continued his routines: work, time with Mila, household responsibilities. But the emotional distance between us grew wider each day. He was unfailingly polite, helpful with practical matters, and completely unreachable on any deeper level. I tried various approaches to bridge the gap. I cooked his favorite meals, suggested date nights, attempted intimate conversations about our future. His responses were pleasant but hollow, like he was going through the motions of being a husband without actually being present. The worst part was that he was still an amazing father to Mila. He helped with homework, attended her school events, played elaborate games that made her giggle. But when she wasn't around, the warmth disappeared from his eyes. "Daddy seems sad," Mila said one evening while I was tucking her into bed. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" He smiles, but his eyes don't smile, like when I'm in trouble but trying to pretend I'm not. Out of the mouths of babes, even our 6-year-old could see what I'd done to our family. Meanwhile, Jasper had been texting sporadically, nothing inappropriate, just friendly messages about his tour, asking how I was, mentioning that he'd enjoyed our LA weekend. But each message felt like evidence of my betrayal, even though I hadn't technically done anything wrong. 3 weeks after our confrontation, I came home early from a client meeting to find Elliot's car gone and several boxes stacked in the hallway. My heart stopped. Was he moving out? I ran through the house, checking rooms. His clothes were still in our closet, his toiletries in our bathroom. But his office looked different, emptier. The filing cabinets that had been locked were now standing open and mostly vacant. When Elliot came home that evening, I was waiting with barely contained panic. "Where are the boxes going?" "Storage unit," he said, hanging up his keys. "Just some old files and documents I don't need cluttering up the house." "What kind of documents?" "Tax records, old client files, personal papers, nothing important." But his tone suggested otherwise. "Elliot, what's really going on?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression, a decision being made. "I'm organizing my affairs," he said finally. "Making sure important documents are secure and accessible." "That sounds like you're preparing for something." "I am. I'm preparing for whatever comes next." "Which is what exactly?" Instead of answering, he went upstairs to help Mila with her bath. I was left standing in the hallway, surrounded by the ghosts of the boxes he'd removed. That weekend, Elliot took Mila to his parents' house again. This time, he packed an overnight bag for both of them. "We're having a sleepover at Grandma and Grandpa's," he told me. "Mila's excited about it." "What am I supposed to do all weekend?" "Whatever you want, Lysandra. You're free to make your own choices." Monday arrived deceptively normal. Elliot made coffee, helped Mila with school prep, kissed us goodbye. But the air felt heavy, final, like calm before a storm. I couldn't focus at work, obsessively checking my phone for messages from Elliot or Jasper. Silence from both felt threatening. Picking up Mila, she was subdued. "Is Daddy coming home for dinner?" "Of course. Why?" "Grandma Helen said sometimes daddies live in different houses." My stomach clenched. Helen was preparing her. This wasn't just Elliot's decision. His family was circling, shielding Mila from my fallout. I called the family law attorney, whose card I'd found in Elliot's desk. "Has my husband consulted you?" "We can't discuss clients. Consultation." The evasion confirmed everything. That evening, Elliot returned resolved. He helped Mila with homework, made dinner, followed routines. After bedtime, he sat me down. "We need to talk." "Elliot, I've been thinking." "Lysandra, let me finish." He placed a manila folder on the table. "I filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow, but I wanted to tell you first." The words struck hard. "We can work this out. This isn't about mistakes. It's incompatibility. We want different things." "But Mila, our family, Mila's our priority. Joint custody, generous visitation. You keep the house, substantial alimony. I want us both free to find happiness." "How long have you planned this?" "Since my parents' dinner, maybe longer." "You never fought for us." "What would fighting look like? Forbidding Jasper? Scenes?" "I hoped I was wrong. I cared enough to let you choose, and prepared for consequences." Silence stretched. "I've documented everything. LA trip, texts, dinner conversation, social media." "You spied." "I protected myself and Mila. Your phone's on our plan. You weren't secretive. Printed messages, photos, records lay exposed. This isn't revenge. It's ensuring fair custody. Your judgment regarding boundaries might not serve Mila best." "You bastard." "I'm sorry you feel that way. But Mila needs stability." He stood. "I'm leaving tonight, staying at my parents'. Communicate through my attorney." The door closed quietly. Alone, I stared at the papers. Custody schedules, financial terms, dissolution of 9 years. Jasper texted, "Hey beautiful, San Francisco still on?" I typed, "Not anymore. I need to focus on my daughter." His reply, "Your loss." The fantasy that had seemed worth everything revealed itself hollow. I sat in silence, divorce papers glowing, finally grasping the true cost of chasing excitement over commitment. Monday morning felt deceptively normal. Elliot made coffee, helped Mila get ready for school, kissed us both goodbye. But the air carried finality, like calm before a storm. I couldn't focus at work, checking my phone obsessively for messages from Elliot or Jasper. Silence from both felt ominous. Picking up Mila, she was quieter than usual. "Is Daddy coming home for dinner?" "Of course, sweetheart. Why?" "Grandma Helen said sometimes daddies live in different houses." My heart clenched. Helen had been preparing her. This wasn't just Elliot's decision. His family was involved, shielding Mila from my fallout. That afternoon, I called the family law attorney, whose card I'd found in Elliot's desk. "Has my husband consulted you?" "We can't discuss clients. Would you like a consultation?" The non-answer confirmed everything. Elliot came home resolved, calm. He helped Mila with homework, made dinner, followed routines. After she went to bed, he sat me down. "We need to talk." "Elliot, I've been thinking." "Lysandra, please let me finish." He placed a manila folder on the table. "I filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow, but I wanted to tell you first." The words struck like blows. "We can work this out. I know I made mistakes." "This isn't about mistakes. It's fundamental incompatibility. We want different things. We've grown apart. But Mila, our family, Mila's our priority. That's why I'm proposing joint custody with generous visitation." He opened the folder. "You keep the house, substantial alimony. I'm not punishing you. I want us both free to find happiness." "How long have you planned this?" "Since my parents' dinner. Maybe longer." "You never fought for us." "What would you have had me do? Forbid Jasper. Make scenes." "I hoped I was wrong. I cared enough to let you choose and prepared for consequences." I stared at the papers. "I don't want to lose you." "You lost me when you looked elsewhere for what I couldn't give." Silence stretched. Then, "I've documented everything. LA trip, texts, dinner conversation, social media." "You spied." "I protected myself and Mila. Your phone's on our plan. You weren't secretive." Printed messages, photos, records spread out. "This isn't revenge. It's ensuring fair custody. Your judgment regarding boundaries might not serve Mila's best interest." "You bastard." "I'm sorry you feel that way, but Mila needs stability." He stood. "I'm leaving tonight. Staying at my parents' until arrangements are permanent. Communicate through my attorney." The door closed quietly. Alone in our mausoleum of a house, I stared at the papers, custody schedules, financial terms, dissolution of 9 years. Jasper texted, "Hey beautiful, San Francisco trip still on?" I typed, "Not anymore. I need to focus on my daughter." His reply, "Your loss." The fantasy that had seemed worth risking everything revealed itself hollow. I sat in silence, divorce papers glowing in lamplight, finally understanding the true cost of chasing excitement